Um, Gosh, you said so much good stuff. What drew you
Uh-huh.
into this particular field of study?
Well, I read the book How We Love, and that in a men's group, and it totally blew me away because I read about the vacillator attachment style, which is the attachment style that I learned in childhood, and it described me in words that I did not have for myself. But when I read them, I knew that this was true about me. And then when it described the childhood, I was like, how is this? How do they know this about me? And so I looked up Mylan and Kay, and I discovered they were here in Southern California. And at that time, I was transitioning back into a career into therapy. And so I reached out to them and I said, hey, I just read your book and I want to come work for you. And so after a series of events, they ended up hiring me and training me. And now they're in their mid 70s. And about a couple of years ago, they asked my wife and I, hey, will you guys work from us? And so then they handed the reins of the business over. And so that's
Wow,
how we love.
Wonderful.
Mm.
That's it. That makes
that's
sense.
awesome. I really liked how you said growth requires pain, and I feel like a lot of people seem to flee away from pain or suffering of any kind. That's like our cultural norm, but that sometimes you have to embrace that a little bit so you can grow and stretch that muscle and prove it. Do you talk about that in the book at all?
I do. Yeah, I do talk about the discomfort that is needed for growth. Um, and And yeah, you're right. Most people want to resist pain. We want to take the path of least resistance. But as I used in the example of going to the gym, you can't grow your muscles without experiencing some kind of pain or discomfort. Now, if you're using the machine wrong, right, and you injure yourself, that's a different type of pain. But most people, when they come back from the gym and they're like, oh man, I feel sore, you've had a good workout, right? And so we need to learn to push against something of equal resistance to build our muscles. And when we do that, guess what? Then we become strong enough to actually push back against that thing. And then we're ready to move to the next stage. Right? And so as we learn to do that just in life, we become more resilient.
It's a good analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, my sense is, Mark, that you work out in the gym, correct?
Not a whole lot.
You know this so well.
Sometimes I'm more of a soccer player.
Nice.
But
Okay.
you get that same feeling when you go for a
You
good
bet.
workout, right?
Yeah, you're right. Good for you.
Is there this is kind of a double question, but is there something that parents can do to I don't know, to recognize a pattern in their children and maybe help them become secure? I mean, it sounds like they just have to be secure themselves.
Well, so secure attachment it's on a spectrum, but yes, I mean, in my book, I describe the types of childhoods and the characteristics of each of the attachment styles. So you would be able to see that probably in your kids as at the same time as you're reflecting upon yourself. There is a really good book called How We Love Our Kids, which is the second book that Mylan and Kay wrote. And so that's all about how to identify attachment styles in kids and how does your attachment style impact your parenting. And so that also kind of outlines the process of how do you do the comfort circle rather than, between a couple. How do you do that with your kids? How do you learn just to say, hey, I noticed that you came home today and you were quiet. Are you feeling sad? Or did something happen at school? Right. And now you're engaging a child in a conversation, and then you ask how they feel, or you throw something out like you look sad. And then you provide empathy and validation. That sounds really hard. I'm so sorry that's happening to you. And we know, like, when somebody does this for us, like, it's like, oh, this person is getting me. I like it. It feels good. Even if our problem doesn't get solved, we feel better that we've shared it with someone and they've understood it. Yet when you share it with someone and they don't really want to listen or they want to fix it, well, you know what? Why don't you just say this to the other person? Well, I just won't be friends with them. Right? When somebody does something like that, they dismiss or they problem solve, they try and fix, we leave there knowing that they've tried to do something, but we haven't quite felt resolved on the inside. And so learning how to do this over and over with your kids to draw them out, guess what? Then they learn language and they grow up, they go into adulthood and they have language for what's happening on the inside. And they're more likely going to get their needs met because they're going to say, this is how I feel, this is what I need. And securely attached people look for other people who are like them, and that's how they end up in a securely attached relationship.
Yeah, it seems like this takes a lot of emotional awareness and emotional intelligence to to pass on to. And that's something I try to impart on my children a lot, is asking them how they feel, to really identify their feelings, because I grew up not paying attention to my feelings at all, and just actually when you do that, your feelings kind of rule you. Do you have any tips for parents though? Like you just mentioned a moment ago, like, oh, you look sad, or you know what happened today. Are there any other little tips we can give parents that could help them teach their children to be more emotionally aware?
Yeah, so having a list of emotions is really helpful. Oftentimes we feel a certain way, but when we look at a list, we can identify what we feel. And so when parents do that for kids, kids learn the language of emotions that way. Younger kids might need facial charts, facial expressions, because that's the first language, right? Babies don't have language, but they can tell a happy, delighted face, so they can tell an angry or a fearful, frightened face. The first thing that we learn to read about people is actually facial expressions, right? And so even if you're telling someone something, if they flash a micro expression, you know if somebody's like resistant to what you're saying or not, right? Or you know whether someone's being genuine or not. It's not just their words. We read the face on there. So as you learn language for what's happening on the inside, because if you didn't learn this, then you may not have language for emotion. So you're going to need to have a list to look through, because intellectually you might know what that word means, but you might not have had practice in putting that to a feeling state. And this is how I define emotional intelligence, because a lot of people know, well, emotional intelligence is just intelligence about emotions, right? Okay. And most people probably would tell you that they are emotionally intelligent, because they'll probably say, well, I know when I'm mad and I know when I'm sad. Okay, well, most people know that, but here's my definition of emotional intelligence. Emotions drive behaviors to get corresponding need met. If someone is yelling, they feel unheard, they need to be heard. Okay, so that's emotional intelligence, is knowing how that's driving my behavior, my reaction, and what it is that I need. And if I can learn to verbalize rather than dramatize, right, it's easier for somebody to understand what's going on. And so as you learn to do that with yourself, you will less likely act it out, and you're more likely will tell people, hey, you know what? It's not you guys. I just had a bad day at work. I just need a few minutes right now. So I'm sorry, I'm a little bit edgy. Okay, well, now they know. They don't need to tiptoe around dad right now, but they know something's going on the inside. And now I've just modeled for them, hey, I'm in touch with what's going on inside me, and I can link that to events that occur throughout the day. And we know this. More is caught than taught. As we model this to kids, they will pick up on that. As you model guessing their emotions and drawing them out and empathizing and validating, they learn to do that for themselves. They learn to self-soothe. They learn to do it for others.
Did you say more is caught than taught?
Yes.
Oh, I've never heard that. That's really good.
I didn't come up with that, but I'm glad I imparted it to you.
No, that's really good. You know, for me, it would help me to to trace back to what happened, like what did bother me, or what made me really happy, or what made me concerned, and identifying the feelings and then tracing them back would help me throughout my day too, just to regulate myself. Do you work with couples at all? I specialize in couples therapy, but of course I also see individuals too. And most of the people who are coming to me is because they're having a problem with the spouse and the spouse doesn't want to come in. Not everyone, but a lot of them. Is it more common for the men to have a harder time identifying their emotions, or is that?
Well, and see, this is a great question too, because in the Western world, men are socialized to be more avoidant, right? Of their emotions, right? And, we're made fun of, or we're called being a girl. It's okay, it's acceptable usually for a male to have anger, but not really vulnerable feelings. But these attachment styles, they're not gender specific. A female can be avoidant, a male can be avoidant. A male can be a pleaser, a female can be a pleaser. A female can be a controller, and a male can be a victim. I've seen people who are very highly educated, professional roles, and then use, and you would be shocked at that, right? But it's because that's what they were trained as, what to accept in relationships. And so, yes, so there is this social conditioning that we have. And sometimes there's also cultural conditionings. There are cultures out there that are more avoidant or more anxious. But just because something is done most in our culture doesn't mean that we're designed that way.
No, yeah, that's correct. That's good. Yes. This has been fascinating. I have a hard stop, so I'm gonna have to get off here in a second. But Marc, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. I'm looking forward to checking out this book, and because you were talking about some things that I've like, I've noticed this and that. So I want to learn more about it.
I'm happy to come on again and talk about attachment style or attachment style sexual propensities or things like that. I mean, our attachment style affects the way we connect in all different.
Wow. That sounds very interesting. For some reason, sex is pretty popular with the audience. So
oh, I'm sure it is. For some reason.
The weirdest thing. I think I'll take you up on that. That sounds like a good.
Rex, Mark, that would actually be a great topic.
Mark down Mark for that. That'll be good.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure to meet you guys and discover your podcast and find out about it. Fantastic that it's the #1 podcast, you said, in Utah.
Yeah, in Utah. Yeah, Marriage Podcast. So thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.